Welcome to the ground up screening. In this 10-step assessment, we're going to try to get objective data on where you're at in terms of mobility, but also in terms of coordination, flexibility, all things that are going to help you in a well-balanced fitness routine to get a starting point and hopefully a place that you can test and retest by using our scoring system. So make sure that you have your sheet and you have a scoring system, and you want to try to do his best job of keeping that as accurate as possible. Now let's get started. First test is our ankle assessment. We're going to assess the amount of range of motion we have, which we call dorsiflexion of the ankle. It has a huge effect on the rest of your kinetic chain, so we think starting here is a great spot. There's going to be an essential scoring, an evolve scoring, and empower scoring. 1 point for essentials, 2 points for evolve, 3 points for empower, so that we have some objective data. For essential scoring and scoring overall, we got to make sure your foot is flat on the ground, so barefoot or just in socks is acceptable, while the top knee touches the wall. We want to move over the 4th and 5th over here, and then as we continue to score, we're finding out how many inches from the wall can we get while still touching the knee to the wall without lifting the heel. So as Hunter gets going, he's going to move back until he finds his final score. It looks like just a little bit forward there, and then he's going to get a score in inches, in exact inches of what he would be on his left, and then we're going to do the same variation on his right. There could be differences there, so make sure you're scoring both on your scoring sheet. Wall quad assessment. This will be the second in scoring. We're going to get a great test for not just the flexibility of the quads, but actually this anterior hip capsule. And it's going to also be able to see if there's anything that we can work on with that 1, 2, or 3 essentials, evolve, empower scoring method. So for number 1, which would be essential scoring, our hands are down on the ground. Make sure you're careful in this setup. It's really important that your knee gets flush with the wall, your toes are pointed up, and as you get going to get a 1 or an essential score, slowly get your foot to plant with both hands just resting on the knee. You need to maintain control in this position and be able to breathe for 30 seconds to get that 1 scoring. To get 2 scoring, hands will be at the hips, and you'll be able to, once again, maintain that upright torso for 30 seconds. And we're asking a lot of Hunter here, but if he can at least try and demonstrate getting his shoulders to the wall, being able to maintain a normal breath, normal posture, would be a 3 on the scoring sheet or an empower scoring. Next up is our ASLR, which stands for active straight leg raise and palms to ground progression. This is testing the posterior hip capsule. Don't get crazy in all the words. Your hamstring length and your ability to hinge your hips backwards would depend on this exact test. For this test, you'll need something like a dowel, and you'll just have maybe a friend nearby as we get this going. To do the active straight leg test, make sure that you're all the way onto the ground, and then we're going to do left and right. If you score, the scoring is an ASLR of 80 degrees. To get a 1 or an essentials. To get a 2 is going to be 90 degrees, and that would be your evolve. And then your empower will show you separately. Assuming you get a 2 on both sides, you can get an evolve, which would be a 6-point score for a palms to ground with legs extended. So first and foremost, as we're laying down, keeping the right heel down on the ground, Hunter is going to lift his left leg up actively himself as far as it goes. Assuming he does go to 80 degrees about. If you can just see 80 degrees, I like. It's just to be right here where your toes are in line with the dowel. 90 degrees with the straight leg is when the ankle bone and the hip bone meet up with the dowel. So that would be a 2-point score. To save some time, we're not going to do it on the other side. Hunter is also going to do his best to describe this, or express this, which is our palms to ground progression, fingertips in line with the toes as he gets his palms to ground, and you can see his legs are fully extended, if not close to it, to get that full score. That is the active straight leg raise, palms to ground assessment. Next up is our 90 and 90 hip assessment. And this is mostly also your posterior or backside of your hip, but the external rotators and the abductors, the outsides of your hip, which we definitely want to assess. So first and foremost, you're going to want to make sure you're pretty good with this 90 and 90 position. That 90 and 90 means 90 degrees out from here, 90 degrees out here, dorsiflexor pulled up toe. And then with the backside, we also roughly want to see a 90 and 90, so I'll just move Hunter into this place. For our 3-point scoring system, the essential score, we're going to square his shoulders up and his hips up, and his goal is to rest his chest on his thigh on the knee to get that essentials or 1-point score. Perfect. Assuming you do that, you'll move to the next, which is getting your forehead to your foot in front to get a 2-point score. Cool. I know this one's going to be tough already to get that evolve scoring. You want your same ear, so in this case, Hunter's left ear, to get to the left foot. And whether he got it or not, I think he did. That'll be a tough and good test that you can duplicate very easily. I like the standards for those reasons. Those are your 3 scores. You would do both sides. Maybe you test and see the differences side to side. We're now on the wide-legged forward fold assessment. This is going to be the medial hips, the inside of your hips, as well as some hamstrings involved, but can be a good baseline in our 4-way hip mobility assessment. So to do this, you will have a measuring tape nearby, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it on 12 inches right away, and you'll understand why from the start. So same thing, we have our 3-point system. 1 is essentials, 2 is evolve, 3 is empower. I'm going to demonstrate all 3 of those in this side view. First and foremost, you want to make sure you have straight legs, and then you can even manually move yourself as wide as possible. The first score is just, are you able to stay upright? I would not consider this upright because my back is rounded. So that would not be a 1. A 1 is being able to be upright, and you'll see that that might be tough. I'm flexing my feet and pulling them back. A 2 is with my 12-inch ground. Can I just get, you can flex now the spine. Can I get my head to touch there in front of me? 12 inches from the ground is a 2, and that would also be the evolve. The 3, and I'm going to really have to stretch for this, is getting your head to the ground in this pancake position and being able to rest it there as you're doing so. So you're owning that position, not throwing your head to the ground. That is our wide-legged forward fold assessment. The squat assessment. For the squat assessment, we're going to have 3 separate tests, each giving you a score of 1, 2, or 3 if we're using the objective model, and then of course essentials, evolve, and empower, as we like to use that for our ongoing model of testing throughout. So for number 1, all we want to see is making sure your feet stay firmly planted on the ground. The toes can be slightly out. As you descend into the squat, you want to spend 3 seconds with your hip crease below your knee, 1, 2, 3, before pushing up. That would be a 1 on the score. For 2, don't be surprised, this one is a bit amount tougher. We have our measuring tape. Our measuring tape is 9 inches from the wall. You're also going to have to keep a little bit of an upright torso because this is going arms overhead, straight arms, touching the wall the whole time, descending into the bottom of the squat, getting the hip crease below parallel, below 90, and then pressing up from that position. So Hunter was demonstrating that there. For the 3 points, or the empower standard, notice you're just going to be at the bottom of the squat, and all you're going to need is a stopwatch because you're going to be here for 2-minute deep squat hold. Overall, this squat assessment is a balance of hips, knees, ankles in your ability to be stable in this position, and that is why it is on our assessment. Next up is the scratch test. This is a test, an overall test for your shoulders to be able to rotate, your scapula or your shoulder blades to move, And same thing, we have a 3-point scoring system, 1, 2, or 3, based on your capabilities. You will need a measuring tape for at least the first part of this test. So I'm going to have Hunter turn around, and he's going to reach up with one of his hands, and we're going to demonstrate a 1 on the scoring test. To get 1, notice how he brings his hands toward one another, and to be within, how many do we need to be in? Be within 2 inches is going to give you the 1. So if he's more than 2 inches and it's into the 3, that is not a 1 scoring system. So within 2 inches with your measuring tape. To get a 2 is going to be your fingertips touching. Good. In any way, shape, or form. To get a 3, we're going to need to see all 4 knuckles grab a hold of each other to get that 3. Next up is the overhead assessment. It is crucial that we're able to assess that you can get your arms overhead before we load this movement. And we have a 3-point scoring scale for this metric. For number 1 are essentials. Knees and ankles are touching at this 90-90 position. The abdominals are at least engaged to make sure that the core is neutral. The thumbs are pointed up, and with completely straight arms without your rotating thumbs, we're going to slowly drop the thumbs overhead, touching the ground behind. Good. Before coming up to get a 1 point. To get a 2 point, now we're going to have to go against gravity. Notice we were with gravity on this. You're going to need a dowel, and then with that dowel, we want you shoulder width apart. Your forehead must stay on the ground, hips on the ground, feet on the ground. Hover and lift the dowel overhead, touch it to the shoulder blades without hitting your head, and slowly bring it to hover one more time to get a 2 on your overhead assessment. For number 3, we're actually going to train capacity overhead. For your in power or 3, you're going to have to hang with your feet lifted for a minute. So make sure you have a stopwatch nearby. Awesome. Next up, we have our balance assessment. This will be a test for your lower body's ability to balance, obviously your full body as well. The 3-point scoring system goes like this, and you'll score on your left and you'll score on your right. For number 1, you'll balance on one of your legs, keeping your just hip flex at about 90 and 90. Being able to keep your hands on your hips for 30 seconds with the stopwatch on right and left for 1. To get a 2 points, we are doing the same assessment, just with your eyes closed, removing that visual ability to make sure you can balance and stay there. If you got 1 and 2, 3 is one of our favorites. It does take a little bit of time. You'll have to balance on one leg, untie your shoe, and once you untie your shoe, you'll also take your socks off, put your sock back on, and tie back your shoe. I'm not going to make anybody see that, but being able to do that is a good test for not just your balance, your mobility, and your stability while you're performing a task, and that's why you're going to get your 3 points on both sides there. Last up, we have our rotary stability assessment, also some horizontal motor control as well involved here. So we'll need you for a 1-point score to start in all fours and keeping the knees on the ground. We call this a bird dog movement. The biggest thing is you should be able to put a cone or something on here without this moving while we have contralateral movement, meaning the opposite hand and opposite heel lift in opposite directions. You're able to touch elbow to knee and extend 5 reps each side to get that full 1-point score. To get 2 point, we're going to challenge you a little bit more. We're going to come into a bear bird dog, which is just lifting the knees a millimeter off the ground as we perform the same task, being able to bring one knee and one foot out and away, and then bringing it together for 5 reps each side. Lastly, if you have this cone, it can be good to use. We're going to do a 1-minute crawl for a 3-point score. So a 1-minute crawl could look like this. Being in bear position, no movement through the spine. As you move opposite limbs forward, that's fine, forward, all the way until you reach above this cone that you might have in the middle. You can use anything for that cone. Lateral, After moving lateral backwards. Good. And then back to the start. Performing that for 1 minute, continuous, with no breaks, keeping good form, gives you that 3-point score. Now that you finish your whole scoring, make sure you had your scoring sheet nearby the whole time. You'll get your score. That'll be your baseline score. And what's really cool about this is at any time, you can just work on the test you're working on to improve your score. So that's one of my favorite things about this is the drill can be the test that gets you better and more mobile as we get going. So thanks for taking this, and let us know what you think.